Hi, I'm Paul.
And I'm Tiffany.
To some, we could be called career wizards.
And to others, sometimes we seem like therapists. However, we definitely are not.
But for you, we are the co-hosts of the Career Boosters podcast.
Like, I talk to people who are very successful in HR, and they tell me, well, one reason I'm so successful is because I can work with finance I can work with people in accounting and finance and all kinds of other areas of business. So if you're not able to work with your colleagues from different areas, then you are definitely going to fail. And of course, there are silos and people can succeed in a narrow sense. But I think it's really important that we prepare our students that most of you are not going to be working in academia. Most of you will not be in isolated ivory towers. And that means that you will have to work with people from other areas. And if you don't set an example for that, then how do we even hope that our students would embrace that idea?
All right. Hello and welcome to the Career Boosters podcast, season 3, episode 29. And a very big milestone for Tiffany and I. Our little podcast, episode 100 today, which is crazy.
I don't have that many hands.
In the intro, we didn't actually tell Robb or Andras that this is episode 100. So if they didn't read the opening, they're finding out now. But they're guests on our 100th episode, which is so exciting. So today we have two very special and important guests for us. So Andras Marosi and Robb Sombach are both professors at the U of A. Andras with the specialization and teaches a lot about finance and numbers, and Robb in business technology management. These two wonderful people also have come together to teach a class called Professional and Responsible Impact, or Business 202, for our structured U of A students. A class in which Tiffany and I have guest lectured a few times on strengths and brand. I am not wasting any more time on an introduction because we could literally sit here for 3 hours and talk to these fine gentlemen. But I am going to start with the first question. Robb, I'm going to start with you. If you can tell us a bit about your career journey, your role at the Alberta School of Business, and if you can tell us how you and Andras came together as two superheroes to teach Biz 202.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me on the podcast. I'm looking forward to this, and congratulations on 100 episodes.
Thanks.
I started in industry. I guess I was one of those students that didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and just started to take some courses and try things out, and ended up with an anthropology degree. Thought I wanted to be an archaeologist, and turns out there wasn't a lot of opportunities for that. And so in the mid-90s, I was kind of struggling, going like, what am I going to do in this technology thing? The internet was sort of coming around, and so I got a couple of years at NAIT, just hands-on programming, and learned that, and that's where I spent my career. I didn't take business courses. It was a computer engineering program, so lots of math, lots of circuit design, lots of programming, and those kinds of things. And so how did I get into business? Well, I learned in my first real job that, boy, you really have to learn how to talk to people, and there's a whole bunch of professional things. And so it was really crash course learning. And then I started looking for a career change, found a teaching job, got an opportunity to teach here. So I've been at the School of Business since, I guess, winter of 2013, teaching the Business Technology Management Intro course. And Andras and I had met. We had been on some student club events and became friends. I think, Andras, we can call ourselves friends. And
Sure.
We're both invited to teach in the business series of classes. And I remember that meeting, and Andras, feel free to adjust if you want. There was sort of who's going to teach what at what class, and Andras and I didn't have a preference, and were put together, and we made the most of it. And it's been a great experience over the last couple of years here.
Thanks, Robb. Andras, how about you? Tell
Yeah,
us a little bit about how did you get into teaching? How did you get where you are? And anything to add about meeting with Robb?
Yeah, so I want to say that I kind of figured out what I wanted to do a little bit earlier than Robb, because I grew up in this, communist country where financial markets were non-existent. So that kind of forbidden fruit aspect made me interested in finding out more, and then that has continued and continued with masters and PhD. And originally I thought I would be a researcher, and I did have some papers published, but what I do now is teaching. I also had a short stint as associate dean, so I know a little bit about how the school works and how the university works, which I find very helpful, even though in the long run that turned out not to be the job for me. And so, and in terms of BIS 202, finance is one of those areas where people still care a little bit more about formalities and professionalism than in some other areas of business. So I kept hearing that this is important and this is something that your students should be more comfortable with, and they should be more ready for the workplace. So I always thought that this was a great opportunity. I taught large classes before, and I knew Robb had experience in this area as well. So I felt like we're not going to fall on our faces with this, and let's just see how it goes. There's definitely a need, and I definitely trusted Robb, that I knew his dedication to students. So I knew I could count on him. Also, I thought that, and I didn't realize that at the time, but it was a learning process, that our strengths are actually pretty well aligned. And we can talk about that later.
Yeah, spoiler alert. We will get to those strengths, but that is really, really cool, because you probably just innately kind of sensed that, but then we can get on kind of layering on the strengths bit in a second. But I want to give some context first, because we keep saying this thing called Biz Series, and we know that the audience of this podcast, not everybody's going to know what that means. And so just give us a little bit of context. What is this Biz Series? There's 4 kind of classes within that. What's the difference? Just a high level context so that everything else will make sense. Somebody or both of you give us your take on that.
I don't mind answering that, at least from my point of view, and Andras, feel free to add in. I think, to me, the business series of courses is really answering what Andras identified. People in industry, talking and meeting our students, and realizing they're very good at the technical stuff, the accounting, the finance, the marketing, that sort of stuff, but not so much on how to send an email, how to sit in a meeting with people you don't know, how to listen for answers and those kinds of things. And so I think when our school moved to the 4-year degree program, it opened up some space for some courses that we could add in there. And I get the sense that were these 4 courses that, sort of followed a student through each of the years. So every year a student will take one of these Biz Series courses, 101, 202, 303, and then 404 as a capstone course in their final year. Does that make sense, Andras?
Yeah, no, what I would like to add is that, so 101 kind of introduces the students to the school itself. 202, we try to add some skills that will come in handy in their professional lives already as students. 303 tries to take a more global perspective. And then at the 400 level, what we've been missing is a capstone course, right? So when I was, for example, associate dean, that was something that kept coming up for our accreditation as well. That how do you measure that your students are ready to enter the job market? Do you have a capstone where there's a project or something like that? So I think that's kind of that capstone piece was missing as well. So that leads to this progression through 4 courses.
It's so cool to know that, the school is looking at kind of, your traditional first-year undergrad student is 18 years old and just like these eye-opening experiences to what the world is going to have out for them, right? You're sitting in a boardroom. How do you have a conversation with somebody that could be a really key decision maker? How do you manage a project effectively and efficiently? How do you, when we think about 202 that you guys look at, it's all around professionalism. It's how do you write the emails? It's we introduce strengths. We talk about brand and all of these things. It's like a entry-level version into what Tiffany and I do for master's students. We go very deep into knowledge of self and all of those kinds of things. But now the undergrad students that we're talking to are more prepared for industry, and I think that's so important and up to all of us to prepare those students. And it's so cool that I know they sometimes have deans in there. They have you guys from technology and finance. They have people that are accountants. They have what a great kind of breadth and depth that the students get access to from a professor standpoint as well. In your own opinion, though, what is your favorite kind of class or topic within the Biz series of classes? You can even talk about your own class. What's one topic that you guys really enjoy? Robb, do you want to go first again?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'll talk about our class. I'm really proud of the class that Andras and I have built. I think, there is meaningful topics. And it was funny because I was thinking about this class and I actually have two answers and I was hoping Andras should go first because then I might just narrow it down to one, but it's fine. So I'll go with sort of my gut. We have a topic on, we call it like getting things done. So there's a book by David Allen, I think is the author. And it's sort of, it was very important to me when I was running a business years ago to kind of figure out like, how do I manage all of this work I needed to do? And I just love talking about ideas of productivity, and I think students in today's world, I think they have too much to do. Like, in addition to not only their classwork, but they might have part-time jobs. They might be on 2 or 3 student clubs. They might be doing case competitions every weekend. And so, let alone even eating and sleeping and those kinds of things. And so just getting some tools to start to be able to manage the amount of work. I just really like talking about that topic in our course.
And I like listening because I could use some more productivity. So I enjoy that class as well. But my personal favorite is a class that Michelle and I deliver together. And my part in that class is ethics. And that's something that I also emphasize in my finance classes, especially because in finance, like if you are unethical in some other industry, at least you have to make an effort, right? Like you have to build a car that works poorly and is overpriced. But in finance, you don't even have to do that, right? You can just sell a non-existing investment. And so it is so important that when we Google, like University of Alberta BCom, then what comes up are positive results and not, scandals and, irresponsible hedge fund managers and such. So I just thought that it would be important to carry that over from my finance classes where I don't really have a lot of time for this and spend some more time on how do we think about ethical, moral behavior as people involved in business.
And I love that what you both just mentioned map to 2 things that Paul and I enjoy talking about. So Robb, you talk about productivity, and I think we take a bit of a broader approach on like stress management, overwhelm, and strategic neglect. How do you say no? I think to your point, all of us have too much on the go, and students are no different. And actually, I think it might be a little bit worse for students. And how do we help them understand what to say no to, even if it's something good? And then Andras, you just talked about brand. You just talked about brand reputation through students and ethics, which is really, really cool. I think we could talk a whole lot about that. I think they're both really important, but I want to highlight one more thing that you worked into class that I think is unique. And I've started to work into some leadership development workshops that I do, and that's music. Like, the ability for people to engage and listen and have their interest perked up changes when you add music into stuff. And you guys add music into class. I'd love to hear why you do it, how you do it, what music kids are like interested in. Do you bring in some oldies that only you know and we would be able to sing along to, that the kids are like, who is this? But like, why? Tell me about this music part of stuff.
Well, I don't know. My job when I was at university was working at a record store, so I was selling records and tapes. So I've been exposed for 10 years in, sort of 25, well, maybe 21 to 29 or so. I was working at a music store. I was managing it with a friend of mine and good friends today. But I just love the idea of music and just really learned how to listen. We always had to put music on, always got exposure to the new stuff. And when I started teaching, I was like, one of these days I'm going to do a class and I'm just going to start every class with a song. And I don't know, I'll pick the song and try to tie it. And I pitched it to Andras and he didn't say no. And in fact, he has some great picks. And so every lecture we go through, and yes, to answer your question, we do have old music. And I always get blamed for the old music. I grew up on classic rock and those kinds of things. But Andras has some pretty old school taste as well. So for me, that's where it came from.
Michelle brings the new stuff.
Does bring the new stuff.
Yeah.
What do you find the response to be? What happens to students when you play music and bring it into class?
At first, they are surprised, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Because most classes don't start with music. So when they show up at the beginning of the term, then they're surprised pleasantly, I hope.
Yeah.
And then they come to expect it, right? And when we have technical difficulties and the music might not work, then we can see the students are turning their heads. Where's the music? What happened? So it has become part of a ritual that, we're starting the class. People should stop talking. The story is about to begin.
Wow.
Yeah, and we've actually had students, and we haven't done this, and it's something I should do, is put a playlist together. And I'm even thinking, Andras, like maybe we start adjusting some of the songs again. Like we start the semester with Welcome to the Jungle, just sort of where are you in the jungle? And it gets people going. And but students have asked for playlists, and what songs are those? And some people know songs, some people don't. And there's definitely some songs that Michelle brings in that I may not
I just want to point out so everybody aware of Kind Ice Cream in Edmonton?
Yes.
Yeah, their monthly flavor features have a playlist associated with each one of them that they curate. Like it's cool.
It is. Yeah. Everyone likes music. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think the cool thing is like just exposing these 18 to 22-year-olds typically in your classes, right, to different pieces of art and creativity, right? We talk about this all the time in our class, and Andras, I'll kind of point at these people that are very analytical, right? Like they very rarely look at things that are creative and listen to things that are creative. And when we think about what the optimal employee moving out into the working world is, they need to have an analytical skill set, most likely a technical skill set, but there's also creativity. They need to be creative. They need to come up with ideas. They need to solve problems. They need to talk to people. Exposure to those kind of pop culture items, whether it's from 1997 or whether it's from 2027, I think is really vital and important to just learning and growing as a human, right? And I think that's so important when it comes to being successful in the world of work. You're just working with a bunch of humans. So, that connection piece. They may hear a song, oh, my professor in university played this song. That's amazing. So Tiffany and I, we are very blessed to come into your class. We work with MBA students who are a little bit more mature, a little bit further along in their career, but we're sitting there in front of all of these students and much bigger classes than what we're familiar with and used to. But we talk about strengths. What is it about strengths that you believe is so beneficial for students? Maybe I'll start with Andras this time.
Yeah, so I really like that you earlier mentioned that discovery of the self is an important part of the learning process. And so learning about your strengths is a part of that process. And just like you said, because our students are younger than our MBA students, it is even more important, right? They're at an earlier stage. And so this is both a challenge because they're less mature and they know less about themselves and their abilities, but it's also an opportunity that, they could start a journey that someone else might only start in their 30s. And so when we heard about this, we just thought, there are all these things that, we wish we had known when we were their age and we wish we had focused on. And we wish we had identified, what are the things that I'm good at? What are the things that I'm likely going to be doing for the rest of my life? And what are the things that I might not be focusing on? And so, it's not a complete solution. Students do have to do a lot of the work themselves, but it is a great tool. And there are so many bad tools out there as well. And so I think just by telling them that this is something that we use, our MBA students use, our professionals who coach our MBA students use, this is something we really believe in and it has been verified to work. You should give this a try. You should think about this. So that's my perspective. How about you, Robb?
Yeah, I agree. And I remember when we piloted this course, I think even one of the topics we had was like personality. And we had a conversation with Paul and Tiff, you guys. And you introduced us to the Strengths Finder that we use now, or that's just been a huge benefit to us. And I think, I've been trying to maybe figure out where the best point of this comment is, but students in their undergrad degree, by far the vast majority of them are in sort of the late teens, early 20s, and just don't have a lot of worldly experience and don't necessarily know what they need to know. And that's our job as teachers, and they may not see the point of it until 5 years or 10 years into the future. But I think something like this, like with so much group work in the Bachelor of Commerce degree, with so much group work in industry, recognizing your strengths, recognizing strengths in other people is, I think, how we position it throughout the semester, going like, you're going to have a lot to do. You're definitely not going to know everything. You're not going to have all of the tools or the time to do everything. So you're going to have to figure out how to do it. And that's, I think, part of leadership as well. And so it's been really eye-opening. And I learned a lot talking to you guys about the strengths when we had some of our initial conversations about what the structure of the course and topics look like. So thanks for that.
Yeah,
You're
it's a fun
welcome.
class to watch as a kind of a semi-outside observer, right? Because we are the professors in the class, but we don't do much when the two of you are there, and it's just nice to take a step back and see how you engage the class, and it works great.
I want to give you a peek behind the curtain, and Paul will often reference this. And Rob, we often talk about you without listing your name. I know, I just wanted to say it that way. We don't ever say names, and nobody ever knows
And
it's
it's all
you that we're
good.
talking about. It is.
All
I'm
good.
getting there. I'm getting
All
there.
good.
But I wanted the dramatic effect first. But you referenced, Rob, the conversation, the initial one the four of us had about, should we do strengths with your students because it works well with our students, and the really impactful conversation we had about why strengths versus weaknesses. And Rob, you're not the only one to say it. It's just we remember that conversation well. And it highlights what people often think of. We should be focusing on weaknesses and how do I make them better? And the platform that Paul and I stand on of, yes, you need to understand them. They can't be blind spots for you, but where you should focus your energy is your strengths so you can do more of what you're really great at. And we often reference you because you broached that question. And it's a question many people have, but not as many ask. So A, thank you for asking that question. B, thank you for being open to kind of rethink that whole topic and then bring us in. But you just noted this is where we're going to connect in the beginning of this conversation. Andras gave us a spoilers that you now both have realized more about your own strengths and how they work together. Because you just talked about group work and you guys are your own group in teaching. So what are your strengths? How do they work well with each other?
Okay, so let me start because my number one strength is harmony. And so that makes certain things difficult. It's conflict, right? And standing up for myself. And that's where Robb comes in. So throughout this journey, we had to stand up for what BIS 202 tries to accomplish and sometimes push back when someone asked for a change of direction. And so while supporting him, I'm relying on Robb to do most of the work there because he is much more attuned to, how do I respectfully disagree? Whereas I would tend to withdraw and just say, well, if this is what university leadership wants, then, they probably know what they're doing. Let's do it. Whereas Robb would step in and say, well, actually, we're doing it this way for a reason. And so we want to continue doing this. And so that's, I think, for me, that's the best example. The other thing is just my issues with procrastination, just to talk about weaknesses. And Robb is the one who is more like, well, we need to have a plan. So he would be the one who would have like the first draft of the syllabus. And then because he is visibly nervous that we don't have a syllabus yet. And it's like almost like this is when we started, right? Initially. And so he will build up a structure that then we can both contribute to. So those are two things that I would highlight.
So Robb gets to be the bad guy. He gets to come in and be like, I'm standing up for us.
I did say respectfully disagree.
That's right.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you,
Right?
Trish.
But
You did.
I really appreciate that. And even going back to what Tiffany talked about with Robb asking us questions, like he didn't say like, I don't think strengths are important. He just came in and said, what about weaknesses? Like, so it's the ability to like ask questions in a kind and professional manner to like get through things. And I personally absolutely love people like that because that we can give you the why, right? So you and I, the four of us are sitting in a room together with Michelle Height, and it's like, this is why we focus on strengths. And Robb's like, wow, I'm in. Like, we convinced him. And, but, and now is a big advocate for these things. So Robb, what about you? What about your strengths?
Yeah, well, Andras was very kind. I'm not sure. I mean, I know Tiffany started at the beginning about like learning to say no. I've definitely got into trouble in my career by not saying no and have to learn how to do that. But I think my number one skill or strength is, and I had to look it up because I am bad at remembering things and I'm old, is learner. And so I think for me, that's where the question comes from is I just really want to know why we do things. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong. I'm not afraid to say, I don't know. I'll figure it out. I'll do the research. And my God, in a world of that we're living in 2026 with access to information, again, going back to students having so much exposure to things, it's hard to kind of make sense of it. But my third strength is individualization. And that's where I sort of in my entire career have really just looked at individuals. Like, yes, there's groups, but everyone's an individual. So even a class of 500 students, every one of those people are individual. And I've always really appreciated that. It can be stressful. You just do take a lot on. But, Andras and I teaching 222 or 202 now, I guess, together. I really think like his experience, understanding the process, understanding, like being so kind. I mean, Andras, you were just so nice. Like, it is such a pleasure to have met you and then to teach this class together. Like, I don't know, we just have such a blast doing it. I'm not even sure I have positivity as number 2, so we do have some overlap, but learning about what we're good at and what we're interested in has really, I think, made this class what it is today. Like, it is just so much fun to teach. And, even going back to the music, we just want to have fun in a class. Like, we realize it's an hour and 20 minutes twice a week, and that can be a little challenging sometimes. So,
we, Tiffany and I, like, we look at the way that we facilitate and the way that we educate is all based around fun and excitement, integration of new tools,
humor,
learning. We will literally just sit there and be like, we don't know, but we'll find out for you. Right. And we kind of go from there. I remember there was a class maybe 3 or 4 years ago. We were asked a question about gender pay gap inequalities. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't think we need to answer this right now, but we will come back to you. And we actually came back the next week. We adjusted our whole kind of facilitation. And it's about kind of learning what the audience is wanting, but also like enjoying it and providing great information at the same time, which I think is so important. And it leads me to my next question. So we have a colleague, Michelle Height, who is a regular contributor in your class for many different things. Michelle used to teach classes on communication and professionalism. What makes interdepartmental collaboration so important for our students at the School of Business?
Go ahead, Andras.
Real life. Yeah, real life. It's that's what happens in, like, I talk to people who are very successful in HR, and they tell me, well, one reason I'm so successful is because I can work with finance I can work with people in accounting and finance and, all kinds of other areas of business. So if you're not able to work with your colleagues from different areas, then you are definitely going to fail. And of course, there are silos and people can succeed in a narrow sense. But I think it's really important that we prepare our students that most of you are not going to be working in academia. Most of you will not be in isolated ivory towers. And that means that you will have to work with people from other areas. And if you don't set an example for that, then how do we even hope that our students would embrace that idea?
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, like, ever since I've been a teacher, so I'm I guess in my 15th year of teaching, this class 202 is part of a degree. There's 40 classes in the degree. It spans 4 years, 5 classes a semester if you're sort of want to do it in the standard, cookie cutter way. But, you're going to take these 40 classes. You're going to take finance, you're going to take accounting, you're going to take classes outside the school. And I'm not an expert in all of those kinds of things. I'm in my very narrow area. Yes, the communication stuff that Michelle taught is just so valuable. She has so much structure. We have some important things. And it goes back to the strengths, just sort of recognizing that, you know what, I will never teach finance. No offense to Andras. We talk about this all the time, but, we can have conversations, we can work together. And so bringing in people who are experts, people like you who know, like I don't think I wouldn't want to teach the strength finders. You guys do it so well. And so having you guys as part of the class and plus students maybe get tired of listening to me. I know they love Andras, but it's like, who else is here? Who else is coming along? And so it just gives us that opportunity. Like Andras said, this is real life. Like, we're really trying to be practical, some experiential learnings, for second-year business students, and having other people come in is really a big part of that, I think.
So when you talk about new people, different things, making sure the class is kind of always engaging is what I'm hearing, some underlying tones. Then let's head to our last question for our lightning round. I think we could talk for forever, but if you could give one way that it's changing next year, whether that's Biz 222 or something else, without it being a big spoilers, but what's one thing that is adjusting next year?
One thing I think we've raised just briefly, but it's been sort of conversation with Michelle and Andras and I, is the idea, like, we do a hybrid class. I think, in the world today, that's some skills that need to be made. And so one thing we've sort of talked about is this idea is you don't necessarily have to be in person in the classroom. You can be online. You can be asynchronous if that's something. But we're going to encourage sort of more live interactions. And so what that actually means and what that looks like is to, I think we're getting close to like seamless. Doesn't matter if you're attending live in person or live online, you're going to get the same experiences. But, I think cleaning that up a little bit and trying to find some more engagements. I think we're living in 2026. We can talk about artificial intelligence. That's a whole other podcast. But, that's affecting so many things. And so how do we sort of deal with that?
Just encouraging students to be truly present in the class.
Yeah, present online, present in person. Just presence, I think, is a scarce commodity. Our attention is fragmented. And so, how do we all, not you, how do we all, Paul and I included, encourage presence and what that means? Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And I think in the world we're living in, like, this is new. Like, we've never lived at this point in our human development. And so, we're going to have to learn and we're going to try things. And I think Andras and I have always been interested in trying new things in this class here. It's an opportunity. Like, it really is a unique class in the sense that we get a bit of freedom and a bit of fun, and it fits into a degree. So we're happy to experiment.
Let us know. We're happy to be parts of experiments, and Paul and I enjoy that too in ours. We could, and you know what, actually, I think there is some future podcasts that would be interesting for the four of us to chat about. AI is definitely a big topic for sure, but I think we need to move on to a lightning round. Everybody ready for that?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Three quick questions, 3 gut answers. And let's just go with alphabet, and we'll go Andras, Robb for every answer just to make it easy. Okay. So what part of your career story has given you the biggest boost, Andras?
I would say I would go back to my undergrad and say my international exchange. It's just something that I keep remembering very, very fondly from my undergraduate years. So, and I would encourage students to just give that a try.
Love it.
For me, network. I built a network over my career, and it has come in the clutch so many times. It's how I started at the university, teaching at the university. I just knew someone, and it sort of came that way. So network for sure for me.
Cool. What do you wish you'd learned sooner?
That you don't have to have all the answers. I know it's a cliche.
How to say no.
And
I'm not even very good at that.
You and me both. Okay, so we love to end on a question that is all about service and serving other people, because it's so important to Paul and I, and so it's a lovely way to finish. So how is service going to show up for you in the coming week?
It's a tricky one because it's summer.
Nope.
So I think I will be thinking about what to accomplish with the student clubs that I work with over the next term. But it will be more planning and thinking rather than actual doing.
Cool.
Yeah, for me, it's more personal. I have an aging parent who does need support. And so most of my week, or some of my week, is spent helping my dad out. And so I'll be doing that and getting some time to spend some time with him. So.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Yeah. All right, Paul, what do you got for a random question for these two?
We are all people, and we need to help other people sometimes, and that is a blessing in disguise a lot of times. So good for you guys for doing that. That's awesome. When I think about random questions, we've learned a lot about Robb being kind of in this business technology management place, and Andras being in finance. Outside of those two specialties, what's one thing that a student can come up and ask you a little bit about that's like a hobby or an interest that they can help connect with you? Robb, you have 433 things behind you that I think people could talk to you about. So we'll start with you for this one.
Yeah, I guess my number one would be video games. I just love video games. I grew up on video games. I remember typing into a Radio Shack Tandy color computer back in 1980 after we got it for Christmas, typing in a game in there. And so it goes back a lot of years. So I would say video games. Second would be books. I just love reading and fictional books and things. So,
Andras?
Running and cycling. I think those are the two things. And what terrifies me is that now some students are following me on Strava. So I really have to up my game.
Expectations are high, guys.
Haven't been doing much lately. So I'm thinking about how to squeeze in a little bit more running time and riding time.
Wow. I never thought there would be that much peer pressure when it came to running and cycling, but I guess there is. So, Rob, you and I, we don't have to worry about those kinds of things.
No,
so.
no,
Andras and I do.
That is stress I don't need.
It's a whole different kind of stress. I had a student follow me on Strava too, and I'm like, now I have to show up.
I get stressed when they follow me on LinkedIn, and I don't post on LinkedIn.
Oh man, the things that we stress ourselves out about, really, right? Like it probably isn't a source of stress, but or maybe it's motivation. Let's reframe stress to motivation. Say source of motivation.
There you go.
There we
yes.
go. All right. Thank you so much. We have had many conversations with the two of you, and every time we do, it's full of laughter. It's full of focus on student and learning. It's also full of openness, and it's full of positivity. And there's a whole bunch of other words I could probably use, but when the four of us get together, and yes, when we add Michelle in, she's often part of our conversations, it is just a really lovely space to connect. And so this was no different. Thank you for doing it, now being recorded and allowing other people to kind of peek into this world that we have created and the way our worlds overlap, for sure. I want to wrap up with this thought, and it was a quick few words from Andras, but I think it sums everything up. Andras, you talked about, we all can succeed in a narrow sense. Those were your words. Individually, we can. We are all smart people. We can succeed in a narrow sense on our own. But together, we have this success that has depth and breadth, and that's what we offer students. And so thank you for always looking for ways to succeed in a broad sense, in a deep sense, in a collaborative sense, in an innovative sense. Like there is nothing narrow about the way that both of you succeed for students, but the way that you also fold us into that so that we can be a part of it too. So thank you from us for the students that you guys engage with, and just we look forward to more of it. So thanks for being here.
Well, you're
Thanks for
welcome,
having
and
us.
thank you for having us. Yeah, this has been fun. And I agree, 34 minutes is not a lot of time, but
I know, right?
we could talk forever. Thank you.
We'll do it again. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Oh, it's so funny. After we hit the stop button, we just kept talking and talking and talking. And eventually I was like, guys, I have a meeting. I got to go. It's just we really enjoy spending time with those two. And for me, a key takeaway is going to be what I referenced at the end. It is, what do you need to do to find success in a broader sense? Like, I think we're all individually set up with our own strengths, to find success in a narrow sense. What does it mean, though, to partner together, to collaborate, to expand points of view, to work with different strengths, to be in different environments and contexts? Because that's exactly what the four of us were. A come together with a Venn diagram overlap of some cool stuff from two different worlds, and how do you find success in a broader sense when you get to come together that way? And I think that's just a lesson for life, that we often can be blindered, and what happens when you widen that view of success and how to find it. And I enjoy that with them. So that was my key takeaway.
Yeah. And I'm going to have like 1A and 1B for takeaways. 1A, they talked at the end about being present and having presence in class. And I have been on a big journey to try and just be as present as possible. And I can tell you from a mental health and from like a perspective building place, being present is a beautiful place. But the thing that I took away from our conversation, it was very, very early on. They talked about that. I think it was Robb. He's like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And Andras had like, there was something in where I was from that there was like a stopgap, and I wanted to kind of figure out what that was. And so, we don't all have the answers to what we want to do for the rest of our lives. But if we go out and try things, we start to learn things about ourselves. And even professors had no idea that they wanted to be professors. And now they're here educating and influencing thousands and thousands and thousands of students, which is pretty awesome and pretty amazing. So, but they had to take a lot of twists and turns to get there. So.
The squiggly career path. And what happens when you just ask someone? Because if you just see a professor that clearly looks like they knew where they wanted to be, what if you asked them and found out what their experience was? You'll probably find two different things. And that's pretty inspiring, I would say. Well, that's a wrap on a few things. That's a wrap on season 3. Oh my goodness. That is a wrap on 100 episodes. It's a wrap on this school season, although that was a few weeks ago. Like, this kind of ties a bit of a bow for us. We get a breather. I am very blessed. I think Paul thinks the same, to be in a role where there is kind of up seasons and down seasons. We get a breather and get to reset. So we are off to be present, to reset, to take a breath, and we will be back in August. See you then.
Thanks for tuning in to the Career Boosters podcast. We hope you had a blast. Yeah, we know that's corny. Catch you next time, and remember to subscribe wherever you enjoy podcasts.